Welcome to TM Radio Broadcasting. My name is Frank Allen. We are live from Boston, Massachusetts. Today's date, Friday, September the 26th, 2025. To listen to the broadcast, dial +1 518 801 1318. When we are off air, you can listen on this line to past episodes 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. You can call the studio to ask my guest speaker or myself a question at +1 617 987 8603. Once again, 617-987-8603. Tonight, I would like to welcome back Ben Conine, who has a jaw-dropping tale that we aired back on August 22nd, 2025. But he was not done. His account of what happened is not unlike many that we have heard over the years. Tonight, Ben can complete his tale for us and our listening audience. See how it may compare to your own case. Okay, Ben, where do we start in your account of your brutal exploitation by the local police? Go ahead, Ben.
Yeah, I think where we left off, basically Stoughton Police Department. Stoughton Police Department had barged into my apartment under the guise of a noise complaint. They came to the sliding door in the back of the apartment, saying there's a noise complaint. I said sorry, I'll keep it down, and they demanded to be let in. And I said, I don't think, you have the right to do that. And they just pushed the door open, came in, handcuffed me, dragged me out, questioned me, immediately trying to ask if I was hearing voices and, basically just trying to get me to incriminate myself on like the level of being mentally ill. And I didn't, because I'm not. And from there, they dragged me into a cruiser, kept me there for an hour, very hot, just sitting in the back of a cruiser, and then they said they were going to take me to the hospital, and they were sectioning me. They basically dragged me into an ambulance. They handcuffed me to a gurney. I was still in my boxers, and when they brought me there was no evaluation. Nobody came over and asked any mental health questions. There was no evaluation at all. And the cops sat there talking with some of the nurses there at Brockton Hospital. And eventually, a couple nurses came over with the cops right behind them. And the whole time I had been very careful, because I was obviously scared. I mean, it's a horrifying situation. And I knew I was being targeted. I knew that this was obviously something that was set up. I'd been very careful not to, even though I was being tortured, with V2K and everything, I didn't do anything crazy because I knew that's what they wanted. And yeah, these nurses came over and they said, I think we need to sedate you. And I said, why? I'm just laying here on a gurney. And they said, no, we're going to have to sedate you. And I said, I really don't want that. And at that point, they said, well, are you resisting? And I said, well, I'm not going to resist if it causes me legal problems. And they at that point, they just ignored me. And nurses gathered around me as I laid there just looking at them, just completely calm. And they each laid a hand on each one of my limbs, like they were restraining me, but they were just kind of open palm resting their hands on each one of my limbs. And they injected me with something, and it knocked me out for I don't know how long. Uh, I think maybe 10
Ben,
hours, maybe 14. I have no idea.
Ben,
I woke up.
um,
Sorry, what?
what was the premise? I mean, why did they do this? Uh, you could have gotten up and walked out without any problem. Instead, they sedated you and put you on a gurney. I don't understand that.
Yeah, well, when the cops showed up for the this was kind of this was a key thing. So when the cops showed up at the apartment, um, for the noise complaint, they barged in, they dragged me out on the lawn, and at the same exact time, my wife came home from work, and my wife at this point, I think was like I would say I like to call it covertly targeted, kind of a subject of this mind control that they have. Um, that's what's going on. It's overall a mind control project is really what I figured out. And she was in like this weird state. She walked past me. I said, "Baby, like what's going on?" She walked past me and like with a weird look on her face and went into the apartment, and a cop followed her in there. And later on, I found out that the cop asked her, like, "Oh, is your husband mentally ill?" And she said, "Oh, he's been staying up late." And then they asked her, "Does he have any weapons?" And I have like a machete that I had that I would juggle for fun. And she said, "Yeah, he has this machete." And they're like, "Okay." So on the police report, they wrote down, "I've been staying up all night and running around with a machete," and made it look like I was a lunatic, basically. And under that premise, they brought me in saying, "Yeah, we're going to section you," which was ridiculous. I mean, they basically just construed pretty much innocent stuff. Like he's been staying up late because I was just being V2K'd, like just I was having voices screamed into my head saying all sorts of horrible shit while I just basically sat on the couch and just kind of like, you know, just was kind of asking them back, like in my head, like, "Who are you? Like, what is this?" And and in my spare time, I had this like little juggling machete, and I would juggle it, just kind of like as I was sitting there thinking. And so they used that as a pretense. I never ran around, I never did anything crazy, but that's what they used for a pretense. And then when I was in there and I was acting totally calm, they basically, they yeah, when I mean, I wasn't doing anything. I was sitting on a gurney. They wheeled me in there, and I'm just sitting there looking around, going like, "What's going on? Can I talk to a lawyer?" And like, but very calm. I just asked like one time, like, "Am I allowed to talk to a lawyer? Am I allowed to make a phone call?" And they said, "Hold on, we're talking to the officers." And I said, "Okay." And I just sat there, and then they came over and they did that routine, and basically made it look like they had to, like sedate me, and they knocked me out. I woke up still in the hallway of this hospital, which is basically like they brought me over to like the mental ward area of this hospital, and I just woke up. Nobody came to talk to me or anything. They just like came and brought me food and gave me water, and then I fell asleep again after being awake for a couple hours. I was still like wicked groggy, and when I woke up again, there was EMT workers, EMTs, and they were like, "We're bringing you to South Coast Behavioral in Dartmouth." And I said, "What? Like, where am I going?" And they were like, "Yeah, this is where you're going." And I said,
Ben, that's a long
"What is
way
this?"
off. That's a long,
It's
long
very,
way off.
yeah, very far. And I just said like, "What's happening? Like, I didn't talk to anybody. Like, how can you just take me somewhere?" And they said, "Hey, listen, I'm just a driver. I'm just here to transport you." And I just looked around. There's nobody there. I couldn't talk to anyone. And I was just like, "All right, okay." I had no choice. And they loaded me up, drove me for an hour or whatever over to Dartmouth. And when I got there, they just did an intake, doing regular medical question stuff. And then I was there for 2 or 3 days. They put me in a mental ward for very disturbed people, very
Did
very disturbed people.
did your wife
And
come
when
to
I was
visit you? Did
Yeah,
your
she did.
She did. Okay.
She Yeah, she did after 5 or 6 days. I managed to contact her, um, and But yeah, so I was there for 2 or 3 days before I even saw a doctor. And then finally, this guy comes in and he sits down in front of me, and he's like, and I'm like, oh, finally, I'll be able to talk to a doctor. He's gonna get me out of here. This is crazy. And he sits down and he's like, yes, Ben, I went over the report here, and from what I can see from the police report, it looks like you are bipolar, and have like bipolar with psychotic, manic tendencies. And if you sign off on it and sign off on being here voluntarily, then you'll probably get out of here faster. Basically, Uh, and he said it in a very roundabout way. And when I asked him, how can I get out of here? He was like, well, it'd be better if you signed in to be voluntary, and just took the medication we gave you.
Don't
And I was,
sign
of course,
anything. Don't sign anything. Go
yeah.
ahead.
Well, I mean, at the time, I was horrified because I was worried about my wife. She had been acting stranger and stranger as time has gone by. Going into weird trance-like states, seeming confused. When I would talk to her, she would go into these looping kind of conversations where she would say the same thing over and over again, and I could tell that there was something happening with her. And to me, it seemed like they were trying to separate me out from her, drive me nuts, and the V2K was like kept saying over and over again, like, just get out of here. They kept saying, like, just leave, go away, get out of here, just leave the apartment, get out of here. She's like, they even said at one point, like, if you bring her back to this apartment, like, she's ours. That was one thing they kept saying. At first they tried to pose as like they were trying to pose as like demons or something. They were like, "Oh, I'm Paimon, and if you leave her here, then she's ours." And I just sat there going, "What agency are you with? What is this? I can't believe this. This is synthetic telepathy. How is this happening?" And they kind of gave up that pretense after a while and kind of started saying plain out, as regular people, um, just leave, just get out of here. Like, your wife is ours. And I was just trying to stay there, to protect her as I was being tortured. I was just being psychologically tortured night after night. I was being kept up. I was being kept up all night long as they would ramp up my they would ramp up my emotions in this way where they would just make me like extremely like anxious and feeling like this horrific feeling of like impending doom, as they made up all sorts of crazy storylines and narratives. And I would just sit there, working through it in my head, like, yeah, this isn't real, like, this is crazy. And that went on for a while, and when I wouldn't leave, then they send in those corrupt Stoughton cops, and they sent me off to this place. And that was when it got real bad. That's when it they got me away from her, and they got her alone in that apartment, which was a setup. I mean, the apartment was a setup. They got us there because she had a friend. She was from the Thai community, and she had a friend who had also been separated from her husband, and then had started living at this apartment complex. And that friend immediately just started saying to her, like, yeah, come move in here, come move into the apartment here. There's an open apartment here, move here, over and over again. And we eventually had to move there because they were just like driving us nuts and driving us out of apartments. And we were directed to move there. And so now, when I was stuck at this South Coast Behavioral, and she was all alone at this apartment complex, that's when it really shifted. It went from her being confused and going into these kind of looping conversations where I could tell there's something wasn't right with her cognitive abilities. Then it changed. She came in to visit me at South Coast Behavioral, and I was obviously just horrified. I'd never been incarcerated like that. I was 39, but never been incarcerated, never been hospitalized for anything. And I finally got to see my wife, and she came in, and she looked like she had lost 10 or 15 pounds. And her, I remember when I came up to her and I went to hug her, her arms were just like slack. It was like her arms were just like swinging on her sides. And it was like as I hugged her, it was almost like I had to kind of like lift her arms up a little bit to hug me back. And she just looked like her eyes were way too relaxed. And yeah, they had like something happened when I wasn't there. I think they've been working on her. They've been drugging her, poisoning her, or I don't know what happened.
She
But
was probably on opiates. That's my guess.
yeah, well
The way you
she's
describe it.
she's a straight edge, like she's never done any drugs ever. She hates drugs. She barely even drinks. If I would take her out to nightclubs when we first get started going out, in the first year that I knew her, and she would have one or two drinks, and she was like, "I'm good." She doesn't do drugs or anything like that. Um, very very straight laced woman, and that's what I liked about her. She kind of got me into line because I was a bit of a party animal, growing up, and she kind of got me into line, and but now she was just out of it, and she looked like she had lost weight. Um, because they just get you into these places. I feel like they can. It seems as though they basically set up some, different apartment complexes or different locations to be kind of an area where that they can do your classic mind control routine. Your sleep deprivation, malnutrition, and I think surreptitious drugging or poisoning, and that's how they work on you. Because that's one thing I noticed with all of this is when we were trying to move to places, we never had a choice. It was like there was only like one place to choose every single time. There was never a choice. And uh and now, now I see, like, when the targeting got really bad, I could really see it with my phone. Like, my phone is getting hacked constantly. All my emails, all my my computer got destroyed by hacking, and all this stuff. They obviously have control of your devices, and they can basically manage you to make you move to different places and have certain jobs. Uh, but yeah, so at South Coast Behavioral, they ended up keeping me there for 2 weeks,
Two
and it was
weeks.
it was like
Wh-
2 weeks. Yeah.
when did they come at you and say that okay, you've gone by 72 hours, and why 2 weeks? Go ahead.
So after 72 hours was the first time I actually saw a psychiatrist. And he basically said, like, yeah, like, I'm saying you have bipolar disorder based on the police report that I read, and here's, take bipolar medication, and if you sign off on this, then you'll probably get out of here faster. And I said, I don't have bipolar disorder. Like, I'm fine. I'm 39 years old. I never had any problems. And he was like, well, that's fine. You don't have to sign it. And I said, well, and I was like, well, but you said I could get out here. You said I could get out of here faster if I sign it. And he was like, no, I didn't say that. I didn't say that. You don't have to sign anything. And I was like, but if I don't sign it, what happens? He goes, oh, well, we have like a tribunal here at this hospital where you can go to and plead your case, and you might get out. But if you sign, say, voluntarily, then you'll be on the path to get out of here, in a speedy, he used these words. It was like talking to a lawyer, where he was like, yeah, just basically sign off on it. And I was so desperate and horrified for my wife, I just signed off. I signed off on it. And after a couple of days after that, no one would talk to me. There was nobody coming and saying anything about release date. And I was just there day after day, and I was just around really, like, really troubled people. And finally I talked to this one guy, and he was like, yeah, you have to go up to them and ask for this certain paper, and you have to sign that, and after 3 days you sign another paper, and then they'll start the release papers or whatever. And I was like, what, really? And then I went up to the front desk, and I was like, yeah, like, can I sign like a paper, for, I forget the exact term. And they were like, oh, okay, yeah. And like, I signed the paper, and then after that, but no one would have any idea how to do that. Just this random guy that had been through the system a couple of times that told me, like, yeah, this is what you got to do to get out of here. Who was a patient. And I was, and And I did that, and basically, uh, and of course, they were like, yeah, after 3 days, but there's a weekend, and they don't count the weekend, so it's 5 days. And then after that, it was another couple days, and then they can schedule a bus to take you out of there. So after 2 weeks of being there, I finally get out and go home, and yeah, my wife was just a shell of her former self. She was a shell. She was like totally different. Uh, you know, she had lost weight. She had this weird. Her eyelids were like slightly. She'd always been bright eyed, like a real bright eyed, like smart, tenacious woman. And now her eyes are kind of like half closed, and she was just saying bizarre things. Like she was just like, "I'm so glad you're back. You have to take your medication. I miss your smile." And she would say these same things over and over again to me, over and over and over again. Like this was not her. Like this is not coming from her. This is like obviously like things that were like drilled into her head.
Ben,
And
Ben,
yeah,
I think that they probably sold her a bill of goods, and they probably talked to her for, I don't know, hours at a time, and they were trying to throw a stake into your back. But number one, the minute you signed that paper, you just paid the entire floor. Go ahead, go ahead.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That's what I found when I did research after. That is a standard operating procedure for target individuals, to be to be discredited, is to make sure that they get some kind of mental illness diagnosis on their record, to just make sure that nobody believes them, basically, and so that then they can be subject to the rules of the state. So if they step out of line, then they can be hospitalized, or yeah, it obviously makes sense. And but no, nobody. A lot of TI say this to me. They think people are being approached. They think that there's like people that come up to their loved ones or their neighbors and pay them and talk to them. I don't think it works like that at all. I think it is there's a mind control program, a system that they have set up where they can brainwash people around you, and they can nudge people with intimated thoughts. And it's only because I've been through it myself. Like with me, I'm being overtly targeted, and they would kind of show me, like it was weird. Like my V2K would like be saying all these like crazy things, and then like they would just like change my feelings like as they were saying them. Like I'd be like in an extreme state of like depressed, like I would say like horror and sadness. And then they would just be like, yeah, guess what? Like you're not sad anymore. And all of a sudden it was just like all that horrible feeling I had, that deep pit you get in your stomach, that tightness in your chest, and that feeling, it would just disappear like instantly. And like I realized that they have control over this. Like they have control over your nervous system. Um, whether it's through an implant or through some kind of brain signature lock in through brain computer interface. I don't know exactly, how it works, but I saw it in action. And then they started doing like Dr. Robert Duncan talked about. I found him after the fact. They started sharing sensory experiences with me, and I would feel somebody caressing my leg. I would feel somebody, uh, you know, I would say, handling me, in different ways, and I would feel like these like very strange sensations as the V2K was messing with me. And then came the really crazy stuff, which was they would uh, they would share, uh, like Dr. Robert Duncan talks about, like if you're in a hive mind, this system they put you in a hive mind, and they can basically like share, the usually it's two other people, two other agents that are handling you, and they can basically like share emotions. They can share images through your mind. They can direct dreams, and they can you know uh, imitate thoughts. They can basically like put these kind of like supplanted thoughts into your mind, which if it's done right, you don't even notice it. You just think it's your own thoughts. Especially if you have a handler that's watching you and they know how you think, and they have they basically plant a thought that's close enough to how you normally think. You go along with it, and like that, I think that's the modern state of mind control, and how it works, because they were doing it to me. It's showing off. Like, it was like these people that were showing it off, saying like, we got your wife and we have control over you. And we're kind of like, we're kind of doing a thing. Like, they would say like things like that. And even now, like right up to this broadcast, um I suffer from V2K. I have, agents that are not AI. Like, I'll sit there and try to, throw little monkey wrenches in, thinking they're AI because they repeat stuff a lot. But then they'll talk to me, pretty candidly, like a person would. And it's just a 24/7 assault, from the moment I wake up to when I go to sleep, and it basically never stops. And they try to trip me up. They try to get me in trouble. Um, you know, like, even now, I'm on I'm on probation. They got my wife to say crazy stuff about me that never happened. Uh, as I try to stick by her, and she like lost her mind, and so now I'm on probation. They'll literally try to make me forget appointments. They'll try to create scenarios to distract me, like insane stuff, and you just have to battle it. But I mean,
Ben,
that's the kind of thing that's going on. And
Ben,
I don't think that anybody approached my wife. I think that she is a classic victim of mind control. From everything that I saw, it was like they kept her from eating, they kept her from sleeping. They would keep her up at night. She would just wake up randomly in the night and be like, "You're keeping me awake. You're keeping me awake." And I'd be like laying there next to her. I'm like, "I didn't do anything." And you just see her just wake up every like 20 minutes and not be able to sleep. And these things are done purposefully, and a lot of TIs can attest to it. Like, they mess with your sleep because it's classic mind control method to make sure that you're sleep deprived. I'm sorry, you go ahead.
no, that's okay. I was just going to let you know that it is just about time for a commercial. And we can do that now if you like and get it out of the way.
Yeah, that's cool.
All right. We'll run the commercial and we'll be right back. 5 minutes.
Chris, I've been hosting events for targeted individuals, but no one ever comes.
You need TIevents.org. It's where TIs find all the events, conference calls, meetups, webinars.
How do I get listed?
Just go to TIevents.org. It's easy. TIevents.org, where the TI community connects. List your event today.
Okay, Ben, go right ahead.
Yeah. So yeah, after I got back from Dartmouth, from the forced incarceration there at the mental ward, which was insane. Uh, that's when things really started going crazy. That's when the V2K really amped up, and more importantly, and more sad, like, heartbreakingly, I guess. My wife was. It was like she was under like total control at that point. She walked around like a robot. Um, she would just constantly say to me like, "Take your medication, take your medication," and I'd just be like, like, "Yeah, I'm good, I'm fine. Like, why are you saying that?" It was like she was just completely programmed at that point. And with V2K, was just saying, outright, like, yeah, like, we have control of your wife. And they at that point were trying to they were trying to get me to go and do drugs. They were trying to get me to go out and cheat on my wife. My V2K was at one point I went to pick up my wife and her friend, who was this Russian woman. And and they were saying like, "Oh, have sex with her, have sex with her," and her friend started coming on to me, like, extremely, like this, like, really, like, there was like no question to it, and I ignored it, and moved on and dropped her off, and took my wife home. But there was the classic kind of government tactics you would see, where they're trying to honeypot you with other people, get you in trouble. It seemed as though all they were doing was trying to create a situation where they could further separate me from my wife and get her alone. And it was then that they started saying that, yeah, we have your wife, she's mind controlled, we can put her in hypnotic states, which I did see. I saw her go into hypnotic states several times. Like it was like a hip. When I was talking to her, all of a sudden it was just like a hypnotist snapped their fingers and her head just lolled down into her chest, and her arms dropped down to her side, and she just like went into a complete hypnotic state, and then all of a sudden just kind of came back to life, and like would just get up and walk out of the room and go sit down and start acting completely different. And they told me, like, yeah, like, we got your wife, she's working a massage parlor, and guess what, when the doors close, we can do that to her. And that's what we're doing with women all over the country. Like, we can do that with any woman or any man, but with women it's more valuable. And we can basically put them into these states and make them do whatever we want, and they don't remember anything, and we can implant false memories. So do the math. And they just, would laugh. And then they, started constantly saying, you're a cuck, we're cucking you, and just trying to demoralize me. And at first I thought it was just a demoralization tactic, but then I went down to where she works, and I show up there, and the owner of the massage parlor, which I had met before, this older Chinese woman who I had met before, we went to a Christmas party that she had, and a very kind of vivacious woman, very, just a business savvy, normal lady. I saw her now, and her face was like, it was like blank, and like there was this like crazy, her eyes were just wide open. She looked bizarre, and she had lost, I would say, 30 or 40 pounds from when I had last seen her.
I think that you were actually in a nest. It sounds like you were encamped right in the middle of a nest of them.
Yeah, I agree. And I don't know if I was set up in the first place, because I'd always been a vehement researcher of government, malfeasance and the deep state and conspiracies, and I was always posting about it online. A big critic of the federal government, big critic of the intelligence communities and Israel, and I was always like kind of posting about that stuff online. And I don't know if I was set up with my wife, who was totally unwitting. I think that they're just kind of these MK Ultra honeypots. These are women that have no idea that they're a part of this. And yeah, when I went down to her work after they were saying, yeah, this is what we're doing. Like, we have these women that are suggestible, and we can put them in these hypnotic states, and we'll make them do what we want, and basically have these, prostitutes that we don't have to pay, and leave no evidence because they don't remember anything. And when I went down to her work, I literally just walked in, and I was just like, hey, how you doing? Is my wife working? Is she here? I just want to see if she wants to go out to lunch. And like the owner, who just, like I said, like looked like she lost 30 pounds and was all wide-eyed and crazy looking, just stared at me and was just like, yeah, she's working right now. And I go, okay, all right, cool, have a nice day. And I left, and that day my wife comes home crying and says, you got me fired. And I was like, what? She said, you came in there and they said that you tried to walk into the back of the building, and there were people watching on cameras. That there were people in the back watching on cameras, which there's no people watching cameras. I mean, I've been in there before plenty of times, and normally it's just maybe there were people that weren't working, though, girls sitting in the back room eating lunch or something like that. She's like, there were people watching on cameras, and they said you tried to walk into the back room, and they said you have to get rid of your husband if you want to come and work here anymore. And they said, maybe if you get rid of your husband, then you can come back and work, but otherwise you're fired. And she's just crying and saying that, just like out of her mind crying. And I was like, well, why would that happen? I never did that. And then the next day, I asked her, like, what happened? She goes, yeah, I'm fired, and I can't go back and work there. And I go, well, they said that maybe you could go back and work, right? And she goes, I never said that. I never said that. And she was just confused. Like, she had this, like, when I said it, it was like she stared off in the distance, kind of like had this kind of like blank look. Like, it was just a bizarre look, like just a strange, like staring off into the distance kind of thing. And then goes, I never said that. I never said that. They said I'm fired forever. And I went, all right.
Ben,
And then,
I think you were set up right from the beginning. And
yeah, I think so too.
You can figure out who, but I will say that it looks like one big setup. All right, go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. I think it was a setup, and it's horrific because I've been with my wife now for 7 years, 7 years now, and it's really sad to look back at it and think like this is what these people were doing. But this targeted individual thing is a very complex. Very complex. I talked to 8 or 9 different TIs that have collected the numbers, and we keep in touch. And I go on these conference calls and talk to all these different people, and there's just this weird long-term game that seems to be played with people like us. It's not a simple COINTELPRO of getting rid of political dissidents. It's not a simple sex trafficking thing where they want to sex traffic people. It's this weird mixture of a lot of different elements, including those where they seem to want a long-term torture scenario where they lock people into a very turbulent life, where their everything is kind of torn apart perpetually until the person is basically just broken and controlled. And that's basically the that's basically, I mean, right now they have my wife like texting and calling me like crazy because they've done everything they can to keep me off of like these conference calls. Like I'll call into a conference call, and my wife will like run out into like a parking lot where I'm at and just find me. Like she'll just know where I am. I'll be like, in like a around the corner, away from where she'd have no idea where I am, and she'll just walk out there, and I turn around, she's there. She's like, are you talking to those people again about the government? And I'll say, no, I'm not. And like they're just like utterly controlling her, like via these, she's like completely mind controlled, and she's just like monitoring me and making sure that I don't talk about any of this stuff.
Ben, where is she
tonight.
now? Where is your wife? Huh? Where is your wife now?
My wife, she went out. She went out to go get her nails done, and I was like, all right, good. I'll be able to get on this conference call. And I went around. I went a couple, like a block over, I'm just sitting in like a parking lot on a bench, and I knew this was gonna happen. Like right now, like she just started calling over and over, and now she's just sending me like text after text after text, like, why don't you pick up the phone? Why don't you pick up the phone? What's going on? What are you doing? Where are you? And I had already told her I was going to take my bike down and walk down by the beach, but she is not in control of herself. Like these people, this is what they do. They go after the women first, most of the time, and they get the mind controlled, and then they can manage a whole family from there. That's kind of the pattern that I managed to kind of figure out from looking at all these other TIs. And yeah, it just makes sense because women, from a hypnosis standpoint, women are more susceptible. They're more suggestive. It's nothing saying that women are more stupid than men or more gullible. It's just it's a biological, it's just a neurological fact that hypnosis will work better on women basically overall. That's why they target women with propaganda, with mass media in the first place, with culture steering and all that. And yeah, but I mean, And they keep saying like, I'm an idiot for staying with, like, my V2K is just like, yeah, like we're gonna use your wife to take you down. And I just refuse to leave her, because I know that sex trafficking is a big part of this, and they're obviously sex trafficking her, and she has no idea. She has no idea, and I just want to stay with her as long as possible because I'm targeted anyway. These people, they got my phone tapped. They destroyed my computer with all this crazy malware out of nowhere. They manage where I can get a job. They manage where I can move to. It's an extreme monitoring that's happening. So I just figure I'm just gonna stick with her and at least comfort her and protect her for as long as I can. Whatever limited ways I can against this, because this is quite a system that they have worked out. I mean, when you're talking about using this mind control program that is multifaceted, everything from intelligence gathering to sex traffic to getting rid of political dissidents, to population control and depopulation, which is a big thing that they're trying to do. This is a huge system
Ben?
that
Ben, I think I think a way that they make their money is selling sexual feelings on the dark web.
Yes.
I believe they
100%. 100%. They that was another thing that they did. I mean, they do a lot of sexual weird stuff with me where they will cause these surges of emotion. And they did it a lot with just sadness and depression, where I would just like, when I realized what was going on with my wife and that I really couldn't protect her from this. I mean, it was like, I would just cry like a banshee. Like I would just like have these ridiculous crying fits that I never would have, and then, but before that, and then through it, they would cause these extreme feelings of sexual lust, and weird, like literally like control my nervous system and like sexually excite me and use this electronic rape that they do where they play with your genitalia. They did a lot of that stuff with me constantly throughout the whole thing. And at one point, I was smoking a cigarette, and I was like distracted because my V2K is just talking at me, saying all sorts of insane shit. And I'm lighting a cigarette, and then I rested the lighter on my bare stomach, and I accidentally burned myself with the metal part of the lighter. And when I did it, my V2K screamed. My V2K just goes ah like that. And it burned me, and I startled myself a little bit, but I heard my V2K scream like that, and I just sat there for a minute, and I went, you guys can feel what I feel. Like you're locked in with my body, and you're sharing my sensations. And they got all quiet, and they stopped talking, and then I realized like, oh, you guys are you. So when I'm intimate with my wife, whatever I'm doing, I'm smoking a cigarette, or getting drunk or whatever, you can share those sensations with me. And then, and that was before I discovered Dr. Robert Duncan and his, because he had worked with DARPA, he'd worked with the CIA, and he wrote Project Soul Catcher, that explained this system, where they can share sensations with people. So it's I would say it's like a benefit. It's like extra benefits for these people that do this torture, where they can sit there and they can, if you go to have sex with your wife, they can join in. They can basically they could lock in with your wife, they could lock in with you, and share those sensations with themselves. So it's like a little bit of it's that those extra benefits, to an incentive for these people, and not just that. But then you can talk about the emotional level, because they can share emotions. They can share, these, which are obviously, emotions are way more powerful than any sexual experience. The emotional element is obviously, especially if you're dealing with somebody that's a psychopath that's willing to do this type of thing, they're duller. Their senses are duller, and if they can share with somebody, which I think is a big part of this, they can share with like a sensitive, empathetic person who experiences emotions on a deeper level and more extremely. um, they can just tap into that and kind of get high off of your happiness, get high off of your sadness, and these type of things. And that was a big, burning myself with that lighter by accident was a big breakthrough. I realized, like, oh my god, this is what you guys are doing, because they were just sitting there talking all this bullshit, and I'm just like, aren't you guys bored? Like, I'm just sitting here all night, and you just talk at me all night long,
Ben,
and
that
listen to me just trying to be as boring as possible.
that
But
might have
they
been
were
bullshit.
walking in.
That might have been
Sorry, go ahead.
bullshit. That could have been bullshit. Uh,
Oh, when I
because
burned myself.
no, not on your end, but them commenting on it or screaming about it. That could be bullshit, but try something else that they
I don't know.
can't see.
Well, no, from there it just made sense, because it was instantaneous. Like I touched the lighter myself, and like they screamed before I did. Like they screamed before I even noticed it. Um, so but it might have been bullshit. They might have, because since then, like, I've found that they can make my limbs move. They've made my limbs move around. They've made me say things out loud, that I didn't want to say. They can make me talk. They can make me say certain things. Um, so that it could be bullshit, but from what I'm seeing from this technology and what Dr. Robert Duncan said, obviously, if they have access to all that other stuff, and they have this link with your brain and a hive mind, it makes perfect sense that they would be able to share sensory experiences. That's kind of a basic premise, that makes perfect sense. And when I see what they're doing, a lot of times, a lot of the sexual stuff with people, and feeling. They did this thing, at one point, where it just felt like fingers that were just caressing my leg. Like, it just felt like there were fingers, like scratching and caressing at my leg. And I just looked down. There's nothing there. And I just and they just kept doing it over and over again. While they were trying to do this, kind of like sexual humiliation routine. And but it was, it felt like a ghost hand just caressing my leg over and over again. And they've done a couple different things like that. So I think that there is an element to it where there's a sensory sharing experience that can be done.
Ben,
Yeah.
I wanted to let you know about something. Have you ever heard about ASMR?
Yes, I have. Yeah.
Okay, well, they put that together with the sex. They put those two things together.
Yeah. Yep.
And, okay, all right. And they really make things happen, or try to. Go ahead.
Yeah. No, they do that with me. When they're torturing me, they'll torture me at work and tell me that, like, I'll be trying to work, and they're trying to get me like fired, or just torture me during work. And they will send an ASMR tingling feeling across my entire top of my head that goes down to, like, the base of my head. And they'll say, like, oh yeah, that's us, where we just got off with your wife, and they'll say stuff like that, just to torture me. And it's sort of bullshit. It's sort of bull. But yeah, they can simulate that ASMR tingle. They've done it to me, countless times. Yeah, that's why I said yes right away, because they like doing that. That seems to be a thing. I think that the people that do this, they have this access to control over themselves as well. They That's another incentive for these people, is that they can use these same things, the same way that they can. They can put me in like a horrible mood. They can put me into an angry mood where I'm arguing with them in my head, where normally I would just ignore them. And I can feel it happen. Like, I feel it. Like, it's just like my thoughts. I just like argue with them almost automatically, and I'm just sitting there going, like, I would never argue with these people like that. I think these people they're just saying the same thing over and over again. Why am I even talking to them? But they can do that through like Dr. Robert Duncan said they create cognitive behavioral models, and then can basically, like, simulate force your brain to go through these mapped out behavioral models that they figure out, through these computer programs that they hook up, go through your brain computer interface that they have you hooked up to, and yeah, they do the same thing for themselves. They can put themselves into moods of like anger and torturous sadomasochistic kind of stuff where where they really torture me for hours and hours on end, saying the same thing over and over again. And then they'll put themselves in like a happy mood and they'll just mess around with me and they'll joke around with me. They'll have me laughing. They'll make little jokes. They'll try to make me flirt with them. All sorts of like bizarre stuff where you can tell that they're getting high off of this technology. They're basically using this technology to get high, more high than any drug could really do, and just change around their mood however they want. And they can then also do other things like manipulate their nervous system to do stuff like the ASMR tingle, make themselves sexually excited, make themselves there's a whole host of things when you think about once you have control over your nervous system and your brain. I mean, they could basically just put themselves to sleep, because my V2K, I will go to sleep and I wake up and it's the same people talking to me, and they go all day long, and it's the same people. They'll be saying like similar things. They use the same phrases, and what I figured out from my research is they can basically just sleep for 3 hours a night, because they can just put themselves to sleep with this technology, and then they can put themselves into an REM state almost immediately, because you can change people's brain waves and brain states. So they can basically just immediately go into an REM sleep cycle, recharge their brain, and then wake up. And where normally a normal sleep cycle would take 8 hours, it would take more like 3 hours for people using this technology. And their brain will be recharged. It won't deteriorate like you would normally from a lack of sleep. And then they're ready to go, which made a lot of sense. At first, I thought that they were just on like heaps of Adderall or modafinil or something that was like, keeping them awake like a drug, because I didn't know how they were able to, like keep up with me. I was always somebody that didn't have to sleep a lot. But yeah, like the same thing that they're attacking us with, they use this technology on themselves to kind of to power them and incentivize them. Yeah, that's one thing that I know is going on. I mean, it just makes perfect sense.
Wow, you've got yourself deep into it. This case of yours is classic. And I feel so bad for you that you are in the middle of this with your wife. It's one thing to be alone and you're not seeing someone else being hurt. But when you're with your wife like that, it's really sad. When you get off the phone tonight, can you speak to your wife? She's going to be home?
She's gonna go crazy. This is what happens. They set it up. They set up these boundaries where if I step out of line and do an interview like this, because they didn't want me doing this interview, and I tried. I was supposed to co-host a TI conference call. I was supposed to like take over as like a host, and they made me go nuts that day. They made me go nuts, running all over the place. All these different things happened, and then I couldn't host it, and so that stopped it, because I really wanted to have my own I wanted to host a conference call, because I noticed a lot of them are way too heavily moderated, and they don't let people really talk. But yeah, like they got her set up like a prison guard now, and I can see it in her, like it's not anything. So many TIs. This is a big trick. So many TIs think that people around them are being contacted or paid or they're in on it. They're not. Like these people around you are being mind controlled, and they have no idea. Like it's this like elaborate game of mind control where they play people against each other, and and they use yourself, in your own paranoia, and they make you act strange and make people suspect you of doing this or doing that, and then amplify feelings in people's brains to make people fight each other. And yeah, so when I go home tonight, she's gonna go crazy. She's not gonna want to talk to me. She's gonna say, "What were you doing? What are you up to? Why do you do that?" And I'll be like, I was on a walk. Just whatever. And she'll just they'll punish me with her. This is what they do. They'll punish me with her, and then in the morning, because right now they want me to stay with her, because she is just like, they could just use her at any point to send me to jail, or to say horrible things to my family about me. So they want me with her because they have complete control over her. It's insane, and it's heartbreaking. And yeah. I mean, so when I go home, yeah, she's gonna lay into me, and I'll go to try to kiss her goodnight, and she'll say, "Stay away from me, I hate you." She'll say stuff like that now, which she would never. I mean, for 5 or 6 years we're together. I mean, never anything like that. It was only after that first time they locked me up at that Dartmouth mental facility, when I came back. That's when she just totally changed, and they could just control her like a robot like this. Now she will literally just go from like, everything's fine, lovey-dovey, hey T-Rock, I love you, and hugging me, and now she'll when I go home, she'll go, I hate you, don't touch me, and then in the morning she'll be totally back to normal, and that's another element of this, is that she's 6 months pregnant, and
wow.
and my V2K is very adamant about how they are, they're sex traffickers, and guess what? Your baby boy, is not gonna have a great life, and as soon as he's born, we're gonna get you out of the picture, and a mind control woman will have custody of your son, and you can guess what happens from there, kind of a thing,
So you think they're going to try
But,
and you think they're going to try and engineer a divorce?
yeah, I think, yeah, from what it looks like, I mean, they can literally they can make her go nuts. Like, at any certain point, she's totally normal now, and everything's fine. I mean, I'm working my ass off, and contributing, doing everything I can, and it'll just be like something as simple as like, like you left a light on in the bathroom, and then she'll go nuts, and
Yeah.
and then just be like, and be like, and she'll say these same things over and over again, these weird little phrases like, I'm better off being alone. She'll say things like that. And I
Yeah.
know it's part of like this weird programming. It's part of their evil, shitty programming
I
that they
in,
do.
I hate to interrupt
And yeah,
you. I hate to interrupt you, Ben, but it's getting
sorry.
to be that time again. Do you have any thoughts for our listening audience, like maybe a way out?
All I've been doing this whole time is trying to figure out a way out. Um, I've been looking at Jesse Beltran a lot, but I don't see a lot of success as far as removing implants. And I don't hear any TIs giving success stories.
He's a good
Sadly,
man.
that
I think that
Jesse Beltran,
I
there's nothing the
believe
matter
I
with
believe
him,
that
but
his hypnotism is the answer. I believe that he can boot them out. I really believe that.
yeah, yeah. I think that honestly, you're right. I think that is the only thing to me that has seemed to make sense. But you know, yeah, that is one thing that I do want to do is hypnotism. But they made sure to do everything they can to keep me just struggling, like just barely above the poverty line. So I really can't I can't afford to go to a hypnotist and do all that. And beyond that, I just, to find a hypnotist you can trust. Yeah. But I think yeah, honestly, Frank, that is actually a very, very good point, because I don't see anybody successfully being like, yeah, I got an implant out and now everything's good. I beat it. All I see is people disappearing. I see a lot of people disappearing, a lot of people just falling off the radar, and that is, sadly, with all my research, everybody, it's like either they just die or they disappear, and yeah, but yeah, I agree with that. I think, that's one thing that I do want to pursue. And it's tough because they just, they do a number on us. They really do a number on us, and it's hard to kind of, stick to that. Have you tried hypnotism yourself?
No, but I think I'm going to give Jesse a call because he is a master hypnotist, and he is one hell of a good guy. So I'm going to recommend him. But at this point in time, I'd like to say, or actually, I'd like to thank you for once again joining us this evening. And I would like to thank my listening audience and supporters and board members. And I would like to say good night from Boston, Massachusetts. My name is Frank Allen.